And it looks like we are live. Give me a minute, guys. As we always do here on a wonderful Friday evening, got to make sure the stream breathes for a second. Get the Facebook groups in here. Join up everybody here in the Mile High Huddle community. Mile High, hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I am your host, returning back after a week hiatus. Had to clear some stuff up a little bit. Had personal stuff going on, regardless. But I'm glad to be joining you here. And joining me, as always, is my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle's senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. And dude, every time we come on the show, once it hits Thanksgiving, you have these great hats. They're so awesome. The Minnie Mouse hat. Give the backstory before we get started and everything. First things first, how you doing? Explain the hat, man.
Yeah, I'm doing good. I mean, it's the holiday season. And this year part of the reason is that my office is freezing cold and it helps keep me a little bit warm and my ears a little bit warmer. And this year my daughter just picks out which hat I happen to wear for the show. I mean, if I have to sit in the office, I'm going to try to be as warm as possible. I have, a warming blanket going on underneath and just trying to stay warm. And when my office is like 15 degrees, it is freezing in my office.
I can actually relate to that because we try to keep our office door closed because we got some extra food and stuff in here right now, using a little bit of extra storage. So we try to keep the dogs out of here as much as possible. But when I get home on Fridays, I have to open up the door. I have to try to get at least a little bit of warmth in here. Fortunately, it's been warmer in Wyoming than it has been for the last couple of weeks. We're sticking around 40-degree area, which is nice this time of year. A couple of weeks ago, like I said, we got 2 feet of snow. It was 15 degrees below zero there for a week last week. It's been frigid, and I can relate trying to at least try to be warm, dude. And what's warming is obviously the fact that we are in the holiday season. It's good to be here on a wonderful Friday, despite the frustrating loss to the Texans last week. Don't really want to go into that too much today. Got a great show planned for you guys tonight. Obviously, the Denver Broncos sitting 6-6 right now, playing meaningful football in December for the first time in what seems like years. I mean, I know they had the game against the Cincinnati Bengals a couple of years ago with Teddy Bridgewater. I think they were 7-5 or 7-6 coming into that game, but that was essentially the game that knocked them out of the playoffs. The Broncos have to win out, essentially. They have to go at least 4-1 over their next 5 games to be able to make the playoffs. But, Erick, just overall thoughts right now of this team. Let's try to keep positive as much as we possibly can in a sticky situation that the Broncos put themselves in. But do they have the opportunity to go 4-1 over these next 5 games?
Well, real quick, I just want to give a shout out to Malcolm Brown. Hope you know that our hearts are with you throughout this holiday season with what you're going through. Hope you're doing well, and thank you for joining us tonight. As for your question, I mean, there's a lot to remain positive about when you're thinking about the playoffs, and it starts with the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers lost. Yep. This is one of the things that I highlighted in multiple articles. I believe I highlighted in my grades from the game, and I highlighted in another article that I did with the situation that the Broncos are in with a loss to the Texans. They need help. Even if they win out, they still needed help. They need the Browns to lose 1 game because they do hold the tiebreaker over the Browns after beating them. So they need at least 1 loss from the Browns. And they needed at least 2 losses prior to last night's game from one of the Colts, the Texans, or the Steelers. Well, now the Steelers lost. They still need 1 more game, and they have an extremely tough schedule. They have a road series, 3 road games left, which include the Colts, the Ravens, and I can't remember who the third team, but it's another team that's right in the playoff mix. So that's a good chance they lose a couple games there, especially with their quarterback situation going on right now, where Mitchell Trubisky was getting booed and chance for Mason Rudolph started during the game. And then the Browns with their quarterback situation as well, there's a chance that they could drop a couple games because they have a tough one. And one of those games that I keep an eye on is the Texans have to play the Browns. So either way, that benefits the Broncos, especially because the Texans play the Colts. So if the Browns win that game, you want the Texans to lose to the Colts as well. But if the Texans win that game, your avenue to the playoffs gets a lot better. I think that you have to win out, though. You have to control your own fate, your own destiny. You don't want it to make a situation where you're going to need yet another loss from a couple of these teams. Still a lot in their favor. Still a good way. They're still in a very good position.
Yeah, while you were talking, I pulled up the Steelers' remaining schedule. They have they're at the Colts next week on the 16th. They have a home game against the Bengals, who, despite losing Joe Burrow, put a nice showing up the other day and won a game with Jake Browning, going like 32-37 for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns or something like that. I don't know the stats off the top of my head. But they also have road games against the Seahawks and another road game against the Baltimore Ravens to close out the season. So that really helps out with Mitch Trubisky playing the calls for Mason Rudolph, stuff like that. The path is starting to look a little bit clearer, and hopefully if Denver does, like you say, continue to win football games, they might be able to punch their ticket to the playoffs. We've got Garth and I jumping in here. Garth, thank you very much for joining us on a $5 super chat. Gentlemen, any chance this conspiracy theory that Sean Payton is scheming number 3, Russell Wilson, out of a future in Denver being true? That's been the rumblings that you see a lot around the local media. Specifically, there's some national media guys talking about this as well. Erick, it's hard to talk about this whole situation and try to remain as positive as you possibly can right now, but this is a big story, and it's a big story for the future. I mean, if the Broncos do remain and hold on with Russell Wilson, they keep him on the roster for 2024. If he's, I believe it's March 21st, if they decide to exercise that option. March 18th. Okay, thank you. So March 18th, the 5th day of the league year, is where the guarantees for not only 2024 come in, but also 2025. So if you keep Russell Wilson around for next year, you're also keeping him for 2025 as well.
Well, the guarantees for 2024 are already set. It just guarantees the salary for 2025. Okay. As for scheming number 3 out of a future in Denver being true, no coach schemes any quarterback out of it. Like, especially a quarterback that's in a contract situation like Russell Wilson is. You're not scheming him out of it, because one of the best ways that you can get out of that contract with as little hit to the Broncos as possible is a trade. What does it do? How does it do any good to sit here and try to not care and make him look good if you're trying to trade him? You're not going to recoup any value with that. Mm-hmm. That is the best way out of that deal. So no, he's not he's not trying to scheme him out. In fact, when you watch this Broncos offense and when you watch what Sean Payton normally does, it's very easy to see that he is scheming it to help Russell Wilson and not go against him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you brought that point up, because that was going to be the next thing that I see. I mean, everyone wants to call it hiding Russell Wilson behind this offense and the running game and stuff like that. And it actually accentuates what Russell Wilson is as a player. He excels with the play action passing and stuff like that. Getting the running game and playing solid defense was the formula in Seattle for years. And I think that the perception of what Russell Wilson was coming to the Denver Broncos when they traded for him was, yay, we got another Peyton Manning. He's throwing the football all over the yard. That's not necessarily very true, guys. Like, we got to go back and rewatch a little bit of what the history of Russell Wilson was back in his time in Seattle before we try to redefine his career as a Denver Broncos. So that's my particular take on that. And I think that this game that we're going to get into here in just a few minutes is really going to help kind of decide that. It help you show what's going on with the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson. But before we get into the breaking down the game against the Los Angeles Chargers, we got to give a shout out to our supporting sponsor of the show tonight, our friends over at Little Caesars.
So make Little Caesars the official pizza sponsor of the NFL part of your game day. Now, pizza is just one of those iconic meals that you have for sporting events alongside multiple other things, but nothing beats, picking up that nice cheesy piece of pizza and seeing that cheese, the cheese pull, right? As you're pulling it, it's super easy, super clean, super efficient. Something that we talk about a lot when it comes to football, efficiency. Pizza is just one of the most efficient foods that you can have for football out there. So order online during our Pizza pregame 1 hour before and 3 hours after NFL kickoffs, plus all day on Sunday, and get ready for some football and fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We have pizza here all the time, specifically Little Caesars. Chicken wings are another big thing. Little Caesars doesn't do chicken wings, but they do some of the best pizza that you can get. The deep dish pizza, the pretzel crust pizza. If you get one of those, that's my absolute favorite. But we really love just for those, late nights and you got to kind of scramble and get things going. The $5 hot and readies, those are the way to go. Guys, speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends and enjoy a few slices during this upcoming game. And again, thank you all. And thank you for Little Caesars for joining us today. Pizza, as David Youngkin says. Let's say hello to some other people in chat. David Youngkin in here. We've got Hubert. We've got Monica out there. I believe it was Massachusetts, showing that Broncos country is not a geographical location. It is, in fact, a hashtag state of being. William Catalano, Joe Brewer, Nawi, Hubert in the house. We've got Michael Ronquillo jumping in here. Good evening, Lance and Eric on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Go Broncos. Absolutely. Thank you, Michael, for your continued support. Again, to Malcolm Brown, our deepest condolences for you and your family in this trying time. If you ever need to talk to anybody, reach out. You've got me on Facebook. You can talk to me whenever you want to. So please be willing to do that. DVA, Dylan Von Arts behind the scenes running and moderating the chat. We've got Scott in the house behind us as well. Joe Brewer, Greg Smith. Thank you all for joining us here on a wonderful Friday evening. Now, Eric, let's start with the defensive side of the football here, because something that I noticed specifically was this Chargers defense is not good against the run. They really are not good against the run. And when you watch specifically along the interior of their defensive line, guys like Sebastian Joseph Day, their other interior defensive line, his name escapes me right now, I'm pulling it up, Nick Williams, these guys between the B gaps are struggling to hold footing. Kenneth Murray and Eric Kendricks are late to flow to the football. And with the way that this Broncos offensive line, specifically Quinn Miners and Ben Powers, the way they've been playing, this is going to open up a significant advantage for this Denver Broncos team running the football.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that the Broncos have done well all season is the blocking up front, especially in the running game. And that's something that you're attacking a direct weakness, as you said. When you look at EPAs based on gaps in the NFL, expected points added per rush, negative numbers are better. When you're talking about defensive EPA, you want it in the negative because you want to keep points off the board. Well, when you look at the two B gaps, the left and right side, they are both right around a positive 0.2 EPA per rush allowed.
Wow.
That's
incredibly
last
high
for those two gaps specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to take advantage of Ben Powers and his run blocking ability, which has been really good all season long, and Quinn Miners playing at an all-pro level, with the exception of the Texans game and a couple games earlier in the season. He's been absolutely fantastic and phenomenal. You want to take advantage of that, and you want to go back to playing bully ball, because the one thing that the Chargers defense does well, despite being a terrible unit overall, is they get after the quarterback. So you want to play bully ball up front. You want to run it down their throats, and you want to keep the ball out of the quarterback's hand, because you want to negate the pass rush that the Chargers have.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I specifically noticed, and we're going to get to this pass rush here in just a minute, because you have a great article up at milehighhuddle.com highlighting the biggest key matchup that this team needs to address going into this game. But something I noticed specifically, and it ties really well into a big strength of Ben Powers and a big strength of Quinn Miners, is Sebastian Joseph Day is incredibly exploitable against pulling guards. We watched the game against the New England Patriots. They ran for 148 yards, I believe it is what it was. The Baltimore Ravens, they ran a lot of traps and exploited Sebastian Joseph Day specifically in that. With Quinn Miners and what we saw against the Cleveland Browns and what they saw in that particular football game, is that something that the Broncos could potentially utilize again this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing. It's an area, again, one thing that you always want to do with football strategy is you want to attack a weakness, and this is a weakness of the Chargers that they can do, and it's something that the Broncos have done well throughout the season. So yeah, I mean, it's something that they can continue to keep doing against the Chargers.
Yeah. So let's go to the pass rush here, because this pass rush is electric. Despite missing Joey Bosa right now. They do a really good job. Tuli Tuipulotu has played very well, but your highlighted matchup in your article at milehighhuddle.com, Khalil Mack specifically against Mike McGlinchey, who struggled dramatically against Will Anderson last week. And those are two completely different style of players. I mean, Khalil Mack utilizes speed to pass. He has a very well-rounded arsenal of pass rush moves, whereas Will Anderson, mostly a speed guy, he can get a little twitchy side to side, cross your face a little bit. What is the key here to neutralizing Khalil Mack, who even at 32 years old right now leads the NFL with 15 sacks?
I mean, Khalil Mack, he's poised. He's on the verge of having the best season of his career.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's been absolutely phenomenal this season. And one thing is, Will Anderson, the way he beat Mike McGlinchey a lot was with speed to power conversion. Exploded off the line, got under, and just used power to drive him back. The benefit for the Broncos here is that Khalil Mack mostly rushes off the left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
But what they've been doing a lot, especially recently, has been flipping him. They've been flipping him back and forth and having the rookie edge, Tuli, not even going to try to pronounce the last name, makes it more beneficial and more effective when they do flip, because he's showing that he can rush off both sides of it. Now, the best way to slow down Khalil Mack is not have Mike McGlinchey face him in one-on-ones. Whenever he is lined up off that right tackle, you have to give him help, because and it's a shame that you can't trust your big contract right tackle to handle a one-on-one matchup at least consistently enough that you have to provide him help. But that's where we're at. You can't. Mike McGlinchey has shown that he can't be trusted in one-on-one blocks individually, especially against premier pass rushers like Khalil Mack. Keep a tight end, chip a tight end, keep the running back in, whatever you have to do. Design the play to go away from Khalil Mack's side. This is a guy who he's taken over Broncos games before. Everyone remembers his 5-sack performance a few years ago. A lot of that came against Bulls too.
I was going to say, was that the Michael Schofield game, or was that? I think it was the Michael Schofield.
It was the Michael Schofield
tackle
game, and he got 2 sacks against Schofield. He got 3 against Bulls. So I mean, even if he's on the left side, you still have to worry a little bit, because consistency of Bulls has always been a problem.
Right.
But I mean, at least you can trust Bulls a little bit to hold his one-on-ones. You can't trust McGlinchey.
Right. No, exactly. And that's something that the Broncos have done specifically over that last 5-game winning streak. Was they were using Michael Burton as a fullback to help chip out on the outside, being creative with their usage of Adam Troutman, whether it was lined up as a wing player or even in line as a blocker as well. Helping out Mike McGlinchey is going to be one of the most paramount things that you can do against this team, because like you said, Tuli Tuipulotu is doing a really good job winning on both sides as well. Who is the third guy? There was another guy, Justin Hollins. Justin Hollins had a really good game coming off the left side the other day as well. So this edge unit, they do a really good job. I want to go back to the interior of this offensive line, because I listened to you and Chad talk last week specifically about Lloyd Cushenberry, and this man has been playing incredible football. Will you break down his tape for me just really quick and like highlight some of the things that he's done specifically to improve his game as a pass protector? Because I think that there's been some metrics coming out. Pro Football Focus, I believe, has him as the number 1 or number 2 overall rated center in terms of pass block efficiency. What has he done specifically to help his game in that aspect?
Lloyd Cushenberry is just trusting his technique more. And one thing is he looks like he's gotten a little bit stronger. Like, he put a little bit extra time in the weight room. Zach Strief has done a wonderful job coaching him up. And the biggest thing I think is getting rid of a lot of bad habits that he had. There was a lot of times over the past few seasons since he came to the NFL where he wouldn't keep his eyes on his man. He would take him off and then just lose sight of it and then get beat. Now he's staying pretty consistent eyes on his man throughout the rep. Using his little bit increased strength and a better technique to sit there and stick with him and stay in front of him. In the few instances he does get one-on-ones. Still, as a center throughout the NFL, you don't face a lot of one-on-ones a whole lot. But those are things that are helping with it. And then in the case when he is helping with double teams, I mean, Quinn Miners being as exceptional as he is, and Ben Powers, both of them have been a big boost for helping him with the double teams compared to last year specifically, when the left guard last year was very problematic when helping with double teams.
Yeah, absolutely. We got Nathan Leituala. Hopefully I nailed this pronunciation because he's coming in with a $5 super chat saying 2 for 2 on the Tui Pelotu pronunciation so far. Dude, Tui Pelotu was one of the players that I wanted the Denver Broncos to draft because he's explosive coming off the edge. He's a great run defender. I thought that he was going to be a player coming out of USC that would have really helped the edge depth of this Denver Broncos team and maybe even turn into a high-quality player. And he's shown that so far. He's done a great job for this Chargers defense filling in for Joey Bosa. So thank you for the support, Nathan. Hopefully I nailed your last name, but Tui Pelotu is a player that was so incredibly fun for me to watch coming out of USC this last season. I was high on my wish list. Eric, what did you see specifically for Tui Pelotu really quickly? And how's he done as a rookie handling those edge rushing duties, filling in for Joey Bosa?
Well, I think one of the best things he did was dropping weight. That was a big focus of his after he was drafted by the Chargers, because before that, a lot of people were concerned that he was going to be a little bit too heavy to play the edge and too light to play inside. And that's a little bit why he didn't go as early as some people thought. He was just what they call a tweener, but he had the traits to play both. It was just you had to get the size down, either increase the size or decrease it. The technique, the ability, the athletic ability, the strength, all of that was there with him when you watch the tape to handle either thing. It was just getting that size down. So he dropped his weight, got into being able to be an edge for them to that ideal edge weight, about 260, 265, I think is where he's playing at, without losing his strength. So he's still able to hold up well against the run. And he's actually a little bit quicker. He's a little bit quicker off the snap. He's a little bit quicker with his pass rush moves. But I think one of the best things that he's learned, and probably playing with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, something that has helped him is chaining moves together. That was one thing that I was a little bit low on with him coming out of college, was that he struggled to chain moves together. They were a bit clunky and a little bit chaotic going from one move to another. And he's doing it. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's definitely been a dramatic improvement from where he was.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%, and specifically about chaining moves together, because he was mostly speed to power, really bend the shoulder, get around to the outside. He's actually chaining some stuff together. He's got a rip swipe that's super effective, to use a Pokemon term there, but he does a really good job of crossing the tackle's face, and that's something that you see on tape quite frequently with him as a pass rusher. We got Garth Knight jumping back in here with some more support on Super Chat, saying, fellas, David Youngkin poses a great question. I'm sorry I missed that. I had another one lined up that I want to grab here in a second. But he says, do you prefer a Bills or Chiefs win this weekend in the head-to-head? Eric, I know that you've done a lot of work on this, playing with the playoff simulator. I know Scott did as well. I haven't seen Scott's analysis, but with Scott behind the scenes, I want your analysis here. Bills or Chiefs this weekend?
Chiefs, easy. They're 8-4. They're 2 games ahead. A loss puts them 1 game ahead. If Broncos can win out, we may actually be able to talk about, clinching the division. I don't think it happens. I don't think that they'll be able to clinch a division even if they lose to the Bills, but it helps. Always. Whenever they're not facing a divisional opponent, you always want the Broncos divisional opponents to lose every single time.
Yeah. I can see the other side of this argument, though, because the Bills right now, I believe, are sitting at 6-6. And if the Bills lose, go to 6-7, the Broncos win, they have eliminating. They do have the tiebreaker, but you're just pushing that can a little bit further down the road a little bit and saying, we're now 7-6, you're 6-7. You have to get us to lose 2 times, and you have to get another win against a tiebreaker team against us. I don't know the whole scenario with the Bills and their remaining schedule, but at the same time, I think that either way, the Broncos win here, because if the Broncos do win out, the Chiefs drop another game, you can actually win the division this year. So it's kind of a coin flip. I think that the more preferable thing would be the Chiefs to beat the Bills and the Bills to lose another game, which is definitely possible. And the Broncos just win out, control their own destiny.
Win. The only right answer is to be rooting for the Bills, because you have the tiebreaker over the Bills, because the Bills have a tough schedule remaining with who they have left to face. I would rather sit there and have the team that's the division lead lose instead of a team that still would have to win a game up over Denver to make the playoffs over Denver because of the tiebreaker. The better position, the better thing here is the Chiefs lose. If this was a case of the Chargers, the Bills are playing the Chargers, then yes, the Bills. Other than the Chargers, you would want the Chargers to win. Chargers are still
Mhm.
behind Denver, even though they have the tiebreaker of the Bills. It helps keep them down. But in a situation where they are facing the divisional leaders as they are, you want the divisional leaders to win to keep the ability to win the division alive.
That's a fair point. I guess I didn't really think about that. And Scott comes in our private chat behind the scenes saying the Bills still have the Cowboys and at the Dolphins this year. They're in pretty deep doo-doo with the remainder of their schedule. Luciano jumping in here. First time I'm seeing your name in this particular chat. Thank you for joining us. Love the Stewie profile picture. He has some words in there as well. And he came in here saying taking care of Allen should be huge for us. I feel I'm not sure what Keenan Allen. Okay. Keenan Allen, wide receiver 1 for the Los Angeles Chargers, a guy that is an absolutely incredible wide receiver. He's a great route runner, incredibly consistent. One of the bigger issues with him is he's not necessarily healthy all the time. I mean, he had a lacerated kidney, suffered a torn ACL in there in his career. This year, it seems like another interesting knock on him is the drops that he's suffered specifically over the last couple of weeks, man. Eric, this is a matchup that I wanted to highlight when we got to the offensive side of the football, but since we got the super chat here, let's do that right now. Pat Surtain coming on a bum wheel after the Houston Texans game, and Keenan Allen, like I said, one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. How do you neutralize him?
I mean, you just got to stick to him. You can't let him separate. It's a pretty basic answer for Keenan Allen. I mean, with what he does, you just can't let him get away from you. You can't let him punish you that way. That's how he's had an excellent career. And then the drops have been an issue, not just for him, but the Chargers as a whole. The drop rate from that Justin Herbert is dealing with is absolutely ridiculous. One of the highest in the NFL. And so, yeah, I mean, you just got to stick with him. You just got to play physical. You can't let him get cleanly off the line. You can't let him be clean through his breaks, because that instant moment of separation through his breaks is where he wins. It's where he's won for a long time in his career, and he just will make a defense pay for it. And with the way the Broncos play their defense, which over the win streak and even it got exploited against the Texans, the way they win is forcing turnovers, and they leave a lot of openings for explosive plays, for yards after the catch, for things like that. So you just got to stay up on him. You got to attack the ball. You got to attack his hands, play cleanly. Obviously you don't want to get called for defensive pass interference, and just not let him get that instant moment of separation, because Justin Herbert can fling that ball right in there.
Yeah, absolutely. He throws with timing so well. And this was pointed out in the chat. I'm not exactly sure who it was. I saw the comment briefly. Joe Mannix actually is the one that pointed out 102 receptions in 12 games. That's absolutely ridiculous. I was like, there's no way that's true. It absolutely is. He has a 14 catch game against the Ravens, a 10 catch game against the Packers, 11 catches against the Lions, 18 against the Vikings, multiple games with 8+ in there. This dude is absolutely killing it in terms of just being able to catch the football. And yes, the drops were an issue. There was specifically one, and I got to give Keenan Allen a little bit of credit here for what happened on that particular play. He had a football hit him directly between the 1 and the 3 at the goal line against the Green Bay Packers a couple of weeks ago. However, on that particular play, the ball came out of the shadows and into the sun. And catching the football in that particular situation is incredibly difficult. Being a player that played receiver and tight end in my lifetime, having the shadows play tricky tricks with your eyes is definitely something to keep your eyes on. I think the Broncos had kind of struggled with that a couple of weeks ago. Was that I think it was a Browns game. Anyways, Keenan Allen's absolutely incredible. But you brought up something here that I think that this is a way for this Broncos team to kind of take advantage of: the drops. This team drops the football at an incredibly high rate. They are tied for 10th in the NFL with the most drops this season with 16. Quentin Johnston, specifically, one of the worst in the NFL in terms of drop rate. I think that the Broncos can kind of take advantage of this and get back to something that they've done, maybe not last week against the Houston Texans. They got the ball on the ground a couple of times, weren't able to recover it. But the interceptions, and I know, Eric, you're probably going to disagree with me on this one, but I think with the drops and the balls popping up out of these receivers' hands, and this Broncos defense playing at an incredibly high opportunistic level, they might be able to take advantage of this a little bit, maybe get their hands on some footballs and take the football away again and get back to that explosive defense of getting the ball back to the Broncos offense. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, they could. Like, anytime the ball gets popped in the air, they could. I mean, we saw it a few times against the Texans. There were opportunities for interceptions, and they weren't able to come down with it. Relying on a ball on a drop or a ball going through a receiver's hands to get interceptions doesn't work out. It's not the best way for it. And I mean, it's a lot of luck. It's a lot of being in the right place at the right time. There's so much that goes into that to rely on that getting your turnovers. I would much rather they bait Justin Herbert into a bad throw that Justin Simmons is able to jump, rather than relying on the ball sailing through Quentin Johnston's or Keenan Allen's or Josh Palmer's hands to get an interception, get that interception. It's just so unreliable that you can't bet on that being how you get turnovers.
Right. I don't disagree, but I also want to go into something else that I had noticed, specifically about the turnovers here. Austin Eckler, their running back, he's playing kind of dinged up right now. He's not quite the same player that we've seen from him in the last couple of seasons. Put the ball on the ground a couple of times. Keenan Allen has put the ball on the ground a couple of times. So there's an opportunity here. They're fairly secure with the ball for the most part, but there are opportunities here in this Broncos defense swiping at the football the way that they've done that over that 5-game winning streak. I think that they can get back to that. I'm not banking on it by any stretch of the imagination. It's never something you want to rely upon, the turnover game, because they are so volatile, but there's some opportunities here. I think the Chargers are a little bit loose with the football over the last couple of weeks, at least what I saw going against the Patriots, the Ravens, and the Packers over this last couple of weeks. Let's get back to the Denver Broncos on the offensive side, attacking this Chargers defense, because there was a question here. It was from our guy, Malcolm Brown, talking about, is the tight end position one of the biggest needs for this Denver Broncos offense? I can't find it right now. Otherwise, I'd pull it up. But Eric, there was something I noticed watching these games in regards to the Chargers defense and creative usage of the tight ends from opposing offenses, especially with athletic tight ends, was something that really stuck out on film against them. Kenneth Murray in particular in coverage here. With Adam Troutman, do the Broncos have an opportunity to be able to at least try to manipulate that, or is that not an option here?
I mean, it's an option, but Adam Troutman's not good. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. He's been terrible for the Broncos this season as a blocker and as a receiver. There's no tight end element to the passing game. Greg Dulcich is still on injured reserve. His practice window hasn't been open. He's not on the active roster, so he's not going to be on injury reports or anything like that. He's got to get better. They were hoping this week. Doesn't sound like this week. Maybe next week they're finally, they open that practice window for him. They don't have an athletic tight end that they can use reliably to take advantage of it, because Adam Troutman's not playing that way. Like, all this hype about him as a receiver just hasn't been shown on the field. He had that one great touchdown catch, but like, there was luck. There was a little bit of luck involved, because even he at the first, he didn't think he had it. He thought he was out. Like, it just was lucky. The timing on it was great from Russell Wilson. It was a great throw, and he just managed to get it secured and everything before he went out of bounds. You still want to try and attack these linebackers, but one of the things that the Chargers like to do, it's part of the whole Vic Fangio thing, is they try to force the matchup of tight ends against their safeties instead, and their safeties do pretty decently against tight ends.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a terribly worded question. I apologize for that. Speaking of these safeties, man, I want you to speak a little bit here about a guy that I thought was really stuck out on film, and is going to be a problem for this Broncos offense. Alohi Gilman, man, he reminds me a lot of Talanoa Hufanga from the San Francisco 49ers. This dude's all over the place. He's great in coverage. He's great as a tackler. He does great in run support as well. How do you counteract a guy like that? A guy that is just more of a Swiss Army knife, a chess piece player. And what did the Broncos do to kind of nullify his effect in this game in particular?
Motion, so you can identify what the coverage is and avoid the area that he's going to. Like, it's not that simple once you get into a game setting, but that's what you want to do to try to avoid it. It was the same thing with Troy Polamalu, what people wanted to do with it. They wanted to identify where he was going to be on coverage and do their best to go away from it. Troy Polamalu did an excellent job of hiding exactly what he was doing, along with that Steelers defense, along with multiple other great safeties throughout the years. Gilman, on the other hand, he doesn't do a great job of disguising it yet. He's still something that he can, still develop, that you got to take advantage of. Like, you just got to avoid the spot that he's going to, and figure out the coverage and just avoid having to attack him. Avoid putting the ball in his direction as much as you possibly can.
Misdirection and trying to just utilize speed out of the slot, I think, was something that I watched with the Green Bay Packers, and especially with the Baltimore Ravens. And the Broncos have a couple players that are capable of doing that with Jerry Jeudy and Marvin Mims. Is that something you could possibly use with that? Utilizing Marvin Mims and motion, the end around game, the jet sweep game, maybe getting Jerry Jeudy out there on some quick sit routes and stuff like that. Is that a way you can attack that?
I'm on the bandwagon of just doing away with the end arounds with Marvin Mims, because of the 50 times they've done it, it's been effective once. But yeah, I mean, there's other ways you can do it. You can still use Marvin Mims in motion. You can still use Marvin Mims, to kind of sit down. You can, open up the wide receiver screen game a little bit and try to help make that be a little bit more effective. You can have Jerry Jeudy, sit on routes and sit in coverage, sit under coverages and everything, because the Chargers are a predominantly zone team. So if you can identify the motion or identify the coverage that they're doing, where they're going, yeah, you can sit on routes and you can attack them that way and still do your best to avoid, Gilman in coverage.
Yeah. John Wade coming in here. Let's flip over to the offensive side of the football. John Wade coming in here on YouTube saying Zach Allen may not be complimentary on the line. I disagree with this. I think that this is a game for Zach Allen to really shine. The Chargers right guard has been absolutely leaky in pass protection. And quite honestly, this is one of the bigger advantages for the Denver Broncos pass rush is this offensive line. They are not very good stopping elite pass rushers on the inside of on the interior of the offensive line. Jamari Sawyer has really, really struggled this season. And I think that Zach Allen could potentially have a huge game this week. Eric, what do you think?
I mean, they can, or he can. The biggest issue is, I mean, the offensive line, no argument here. They've struggled. Zion Johnson has struggled. Jamari Sawyer has struggled. Even their center has struggled. I think Will Clapp is who their center is. They've struggled in pass protection.
Yep.
Justin Herbert just does such an excellent job of avoiding pressures. He's one of the least sacked quarterbacks in the NFL. He's at the 14th least sacked thing. But the biggest thing is that the pressure to sack percentage. He gets pressured a lot. One of the more pressured quarterbacks, but he's fourth in pressure to sack percentage. 14.4% of the pressures on him turn into sacks. That's behind Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Jared Goff. Two guys who do such a great job using their legs to extend plays, and then Jared Goff, who is playing probably behind the best offensive line in the NFL. So it's a situation where you have to apply pressure, period. That's just a given, no matter who you're playing against, basically.
Right.
You always want to apply pressure on the quarterback, and because you want to obviously have that opportunity for the sacks and the big plays for the defense. That's the obvious thing, but you have to be able to get home. And that's where the difficulty comes in against the Chargers, because Justin Herbert, he can use his legs. He can beat you with his legs, but he gets the ball out quickly. He's quick with his reads, and he's not, what's the right word here? I guess he's not stubborn and selfish enough to hold on to the ball extra long, trying to find that big play. If it's not there and pressure's getting to him, he'll throw it away. I mean, he's not going to hold on to it longer. That's just ingrained in him, and it's something that he's done extremely well throughout his career, even going back to college. So you can get pressure on him. I wouldn't be surprised if Zach Allen has 5+ pressures in this game, but I want to see him turn some of those into sacks, and that's going to be the difficult part.
Yeah. What about the matchup between Rashawn Slater and guys like Jonathan Cooper and Baron Browning? Because I went back and I watched the game against the Baltimore Ravens, and they have an explosive, just ridiculous athlete in Jason Adafeoa. and Slater had his hands full. Owe was in the backfield constantly as a pass rusher. Is Baron Browning capable of doing those kinds of things? Like I think with the athletic profile that he has, the bend that he has, and the way that he's been playing here lately, that might be a matchup to watch for this Broncos defensive line.
I mean, Baron Browning could, and we definitely need to see more from Baron Browning because he has been completely MIA over the last few weeks. He's been a major problem with this defense, been struggling to get pressure, struggling against the run, struggling in his few coverage drops that he has. Rashawn Slater, though, I mean, he'll give up pressures, but one of the things that he does so well is he recovers. I mean, he'll lose that initial thing and typically create a pressure, and then he'll bounce back, he'll recover, and then his initial loss on the outside turns to him guiding the edge rusher beyond the arc as the quarterback steps up, something that Justin Herbert does extremely well. So this is one of those situations where if you want Cooper and Browning to be even more effective, you need to have DJ Jones and Zach Allen winning consistently inside to cut down on the ability from Herbert to step up. The guy that I would be targeting, though, it's not Rashawn Slater. I'd be targeting Trey Pipkins. The dude is god awful at tackle, and it doesn't matter what you're throwing up against him. He's bad. He loses the power, he loses the speed, he loses the athleticism, he loses the technique, he loses in every way imaginable. So this is a game where you just, some of the looks that we've seen of Vance Joseph of putting like Cooper, Browning, Benito next to each other with Zach Allen, on an unbalanced front offensively. I would do that, except for the left side. I would do it to the right. I would throw Zach Allen on the backside, the blindside defender, and have the other three sit there and make Pipkins think more and just consistently attack him.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point there. I'm going to piggyback off of that just quickly here, because I think that utilizing not necessarily a spy, but getting linebackers coming forward in the blitz package, because the Broncos do that a lot, where they'll bring, whether it's Alex Singleton or Josie Jewell, they'll line up that unbalanced line like you were just talking about, and they'll bring a linebacker to attack the B gap. Let's grab this from Garth really fast before I continue on that. Jumping back again in here with some more support. Thank you, Garth, for your continued support tonight. We appreciate you, buddy. I said, I hear that Jim Harbaugh is enamored with Justin Herbert, so we might see Jim Harbaugh with the Bolts next year. We're a little premature to have that discussion. I've heard Chicago is highly interested as well. Eric, what do you think of Jim Harbaugh with the Bolts next year?
I mean, it's the same thing that's been happening for the last 2 years. We hear Harbaugh's flirting with this team, has eyes on this team, and he just stays in Michigan. We still have a little over a month left in the season. We're not entirely sure which job openings are going to be open. There's been a lot of rumors circulating with the Chargers going on. I have heard the Harbaugh rumor there. There's been one about Bill Belichick, him being done in New England, and the Chargers and the Commanders being interested in a trade there. There's been the rumors of Dan Quinn pairing him with Kellen Moore on offense as the offensive coordinator. And there's been plenty of other rumors. The Lions offense coordinator Johnson, he's been rumored to be there. Like there's been a lot of rumors right now with the Chargers. I think it's safe to say that Brandon Staley's on his way out. That seems pretty much set in stone, but it's too early really to start going through the rumors when so much is being thrown out there right now.
Yeah. Like I said, we're a little premature for this discussion. Obviously, it does sound like Brandon Staley is going to be gone next year. So that whether it's Harbaugh, whether it's I've also heard Ben Johnson from the Detroit Lions potentially mentioned as a guy that could be coming in for the Chargers to work with after the work that he's done with Jared Goff and creating one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL up there in Detroit. Ben Johnson working with Justin Herbert would be an absolutely dynamic pairing, especially if you can get some speed that works from the slot and on the outside. Not that we've seen it with Jamison Williams, but they do a good job of highlighting matchups. They turn Sam Laporta into a great player. Speaking of here, let's go to the tight end position, because the Chargers have a guy at the tight end position, Gerald Everett, explosive pass catcher. They do a really good job of getting him on over routes and stuff like that, working against linebackers and safeties and coverage. This to me, I think, is one of those opportunities where you were talking about a little bit earlier. Justin Simmons is going to have a day here in terms of coverage going against Gerald Everett, man. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I found it a bit funny that you're talking about sneaking up those linebackers into the B gaps a little bit, which obviously it's going to happen, but
Hmm.
you're taking a significant risk with that because of Gerald Everett and how
Hmm.
much they utilize him on over routes. And not just
Yep.
him, but that's one of Keenan Allen's favorite routes. It's just something that the Chargers and Kellen Moore especially love. They
Hmm.
love their over routes. It's one of the most ran routes that they have this season, if not
Yep.
the most. I can't remember exactly for sure. So you're taking a bit of a risk there, but that is a good way to set up a bait. Um, Something that Justin Simmons can jump, and you leave it open, and then you hope hope Justin Herbert doesn't see Simmons or PJ Locke or whoever come running down to jump the route and get an interception. You hope he doesn't see that, but you have to set it up, which means you have to bring your linebackers down. But again, that's a risk because you're just you're creating that space so much. Because one of the best ways to defend an over is you have your linebackers drop and your safeties play tight, and you just shrink that window so much because you want to
Hmm.
drop it over the linebackers, but not to the safeties, obviously. So it's a lot of risk in doing it, and it's something that the Broncos have to be cautious of when they do bring those linebackers up to mug the A or B gaps.
Yeah. I like the way you put that. That's one of those disguise things. We're gonna bring up and show that pressure in the A gap, and then drop a linebacker back, or maybe even rotate the coverage with Simmons and PJ Locke, who this is my turn to be negative. I thought PJ Locke really struggled against the Houston Texans last week. There was a couple times where he allowed some explosive plays, not getting enough depth, not getting rotated over. So that might be something to watch out for here. But I think that there's a way to utilize PJ Locke and his athleticism, his drive on the football. He does a really good job doing that, where you can rotate Simmons down to replace the linebacker that's coming with the blitz, get PJ Locke over the top of the football with Gerald Everett. Like there's some creative ways you can utilize this defensive scheme with Vance Joseph to try to create a bunch of different exotic looks for what Justin Herbert's going to be looking at. Monica jumping in here really fast, jumping to the offensive side of the football, saying, can we use more Samaje Perine, specifically in the running game, is my question to you, Eric, where it seems like he has kind of gotten, I don't want to say the cold shoulder because he's still getting opportunities, but it's not quite as much as it was early in the season. What's up with Samaje Perine? Did he get the cold shoulder because of the fumble that he had a few weeks ago, or is the Texans maybe with that particular thing? Is Samaje Perine going to be an option here for this Broncos offense this week?
Well, I mean, he's always going to be option, but yeah, I mean, he's definitely had his playtime cut down. I think part of that was because there for the longest time, Javonte Williams was doing such a great job as the bell cow back.
Mm-hmm.
But over the last couple weeks, probably the last 2 or 3 weeks, even with the 2 wins in there, the efficiency of Javonte Williams has taken a nosedive. You got it. It's when you watch Javonte Williams over the last few weeks, it's like that heavy usage there for the longest time has worn him down a little bit. The burst isn't was it what it used to be. The vision isn't what it used to be. It's just it's there's a lot of problems there, and I wish I had a couple graphs that I could show that reflect the issues that Javonte Williams is having there. But I don't have them pulled up at the moment, and I don't want to take the time to go find them. Um, but you need to balance that out, and Samaje Perine is the way to do that. The issue is he was on the injury report today. He's questionable for the game. So his status is up in the air, 50-50, so to speak. I would expect him to play. Fumbles are still a concern, but you got to start utilizing him more to ease that pressure off Javonte Williams and not keep wearing him down. Williams, that is. Another thing they can do, Jaleel McLaughlin. This guy has 80% touch rate on his snaps.
Yeah,
80% of his snaps, he's touching the ball. It is super predictable. Pass, when it's a pass, odds are it's going to Perine or going to McLaughlin. Sorry. Rush, obviously, going to McLaughlin. Get him out there a little bit more and don't necessarily use him. That is something that you can start setting up. Remember, football's like a game of chess. You want to do things to set up moves later on, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you sit there and you start putting McLaughlin on the field to try to, open up something because you're showing a trend that when he's on the field, 80% of the time he's going to get the ball. Well, you start going away from that. You try to exploit defenses that are being overly cautious of McLaughlin on the field, which they have been doing. It's something that we've seen over the last few weeks because McLaughlin has been completely inefficient when he's out there and he's getting touches. So you want to see him get more snaps. And all this is the thing is just because they're getting out there on the field, getting more snaps, Samaje Perine, Jaleel McLaughlin doesn't mean that they have to get more touches. I think you want to get him a few more touches, but on those snaps where you're not using Javonte Williams, where he's not running the ball, where he's not the primary target or whatever in the passing game, then turn to one of these other backs to where because they can fill that snap just as much. Blocking, you can go to Perine a little bit more than you can go to Javonte Williams. You just want to cut down on the usage of Javonte Williams, his snap counts specifically, and start utilizing these other guys to help you close out the season.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. And I think that something that I want to see more of is just the focus on getting Samaje Perine more rushes. Forget the touches. Like he does such a great job as that leak out back, getting out in pass protection, chipping off on the linebacker, but getting him more rushing attempts, I think is specifically the focus that they need to have moving forward. Lawrence Rivera jumping in here, throwing some stars down on Facebook. And Lawrence is one of the best supporters of Dove Valley Deep Divers and Mile High Huddle in general. Like this dude is always here every single week showing the love and support to help keep the lights on here at Mile High Huddle, saying the only thing I want different on the defense is DeMarcus Ware as our D-line coach. We should be getting more sacks. Let me say something really quickly. It's going to sound inflammatory, and I don't mean it to necessarily say that. Right now, I don't think the Broncos have the talent defensively on the defensive line. I love Baron Browning. I love Jonathan Cooper. I love Nick Benito. Those guys have shown a lot. Zach Allen has done a great job along the interior. They need more help. DJ Jones is not consistent enough right now. Mike Purcell is not nearly consistent enough right now. Purcell had a great game, I thought, against Houston. I thought that this last game against Houston was one of the more dominant performances of this Broncos defensive line. DeMarcus Ware, and I think that there's some merit to this comment here. I think that would be a great addition to a coaching staff, particularly as an assistant, maybe a quality control guy, a veteran player that's played the position. You've got to get better along the defensive line, and that I know that sounds horrible to say that like that. These young guys have been playing very well, but Eric, what could DeMarcus Ware do with these young players to help them? Because quite honestly, they're not the same by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not going to try to compare these guys to DeMarcus Ware, but they are explosive. They are bendy. They are twitchy. Could DeMarcus Ware get the most out of these young guys that the Broncos have in terms of their pass rush?
I think Jamar Cain is doing a damn good job with what he has to work with as the pass rush specialist.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick Benito is a limited player, and the Broncos are treating him that way. He's a guy who they're keeping him out against the run because he has issues against the run. He's a very, very streaky pass rusher, and they're using him and his athleticism as a quarterback spy. Jonathan Cooper, he's a very limited pass rusher. I mean, he's capable, but he's more of that third, fourth guy that you want in a rotation. Baron Browning is still a guy very much putting it together. And all these guys are looking a lot better than they did last year. Obviously, an additional year of growth, and also the coaching of Jamar Cain. He's doing a great job. He's really brought along the technique of Nick Benito. He's really improved the technique of Jonathan Cooper. He's improved the technique of Baron Browning. So it's really taken away from the job that he's doing when you start talking about DeMarcus Ware, because DeMarcus Ware, that's where he would be coaching. He'd be coaching the edge rushers, the outside linebackers. He'd be coaching that group. The biggest issue with the Broncos is why they're not getting enough sacks, and it's exactly what you hit on. It's the defensive line. It's a one-man show as a pass rush from the defensive line. It's a Zach Allen show, and no one else is contributing. Mike Purcell has never really offered a whole lot as a pass rusher. Jonathan Harris, that's where he's supposed to be contributing, and he's absolutely being terrible there. He's being pulled off rundowns because he's so ineffective there. He's targeted in the running game by opponents when he is out there. And DJ Jones, when he does show up, he's showing up as a run defender, not a pass rusher. They don't have that secondary guy along the defensive line, and they don't have that Batman in the edge room either. They don't have that one-star player to take over games yet. And that just comes down. It's just a matter of lack of talent, not so much coaching.
Yeah, I think we came to the same conclusion there. I know I went to the specific to the outside. Yeah, like I think I went specifically to the outside because DeMarcus Ware is going to be coaching those guys. The big thing is like they need more talent. And this, unfortunately, from the early looks of this, and Eric, I'm going to allow you to kind of go off a little bit because I know you're doing as much draft profiles and draft work as possible, or at least you have a better idea than I do. This interior defensive line class this year is not looking very good, is it?
Give me the Texas.
I was going to say the sweat kid from Texas, Jerzon
Byron
from
give me a bowl.
Yeah, like was it the Washington? Was it Washington that had another guy too? Or am I I'm thinking offensive line? Sorry. Let's get into the draft after the season's over and continue on with what's going on right now. OE Anderson's coming in here being critical of me, talking defensive, whatever. It doesn't matter. Let's have some fun. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What other critical matchups do you have for this game? Like, quite honestly, there's one that I kind of wanted to highlight a little bit, but I also don't want to be, for lack of a better term, an asshole here. Asang Bassey, man. I think the Broncos need to figure out a way to target Asang Bassey as much as they possibly can, playing out of the slot. Jerry Jeudy should have a gigantic game. And I know like that's the big talking point around the Denver media right now. It's a big talking point in the fan base. Seeing Jerry Jeudy wide open, Russell Wilson not targeting him. I think this is the game where you actually do that. I really do, because Asang Bassey struggles with speed. He struggles with twitch. He struggles with just being sticky in coverage. You've got one of the best route runners in the NFL in Jerry Jeudy. He's getting incredible amounts of separation. He's wide open all the time. Can we get some of that, man? I'm not trying to make it like set you up to be a negative comment here. I think that this is something that Sean Payton needs to literally say to Russell Wilson: exploit this. Go and exploit this matchup, and not only just against Asang Bassey. I think Asante Samuel. You can tag Asante Samuel as well. They're struggling with speed coming out of the slot. This Chargers defense is struggling with speed coming out of the slot, and the Broncos have speed working there. They should do that. Yes.
Is he their starter in the slot?
Bassey?
Yeah.
Or Asante Samuel. Well, so they have Samuel, and I know he plays a lot in the slot, but I do know he plays on the outside as well. Like, yeah, well, they have it listed as Samuel on the outside. So yeah, if it's Asang Bassey, you have to target this guy. Have to target this guy.
Well, they have another guy who starts on the boundary. But he's out with an ankle injury, and he's been out for a couple weeks. So Asang Bassey started on his play. Yeah, exploit him, attack him, crossing routes all day long, because that is what Bassey cannot do. Attack him in the run game, because he sucks there as well. Just attack him, because he's not very good. Garth Knight comes in with the $4.99 donation, saying, once again, Garth, absolutely throwing it down tonight. Bellis, your thoughts on prime players staying in college if not drafted in the first 2 rounds because NIL is more lucrative? Any truth? Injury? First of all, I want to say anything about Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr. staying for NIL, completely bogus. They're going to come out. They're going to declare.
No idea what you're talking about. No clue.
Outside of that, once you start getting into guys who, start getting when they reach out to the committee and they start going back, hearing back from them of like, oh, we don't think you're going to get drafted. Oh, you're a late draft player, or you're a first round or a second round. If they start getting that late round, then they'll start deciding to go back. But it's not a situation of they're not able to be drafted and then go back to college. They have to make that decision by middle of January. I can't remember the exact date this year. Right around my birthday, right around January 15th. I know it's then, but it's might be later actually, because the national championship game, it's about a week after that. Anyways, so it's for guys that get those later round projections, stuff like that. Yeah, it's more lucrative to get the NIL money, but those are typically guys that aren't going to be drawing in a lot of NIL money in the first place. I think we'll start seeing, situations like this a little bit more, but not often enough going forward over the next few years.
Right. So specifically, this is from the NFL operations, and I'm not sure if I'm understanding this correctly, but January 15th is the special eligibility
January
deadline.
9th.
So deadline for, yep, and then a list of underclassmen who have been approved to entry that will be sent to clubs by January 19th. So yes, you're correct on that. Your birthday's the 23rd, 24th. I can't remember. I know it's right
Birthday's the
around that.
15th.
The 15th. Okay. I apologize. I should know that. Michael Ronquillo jumping in here, The Rock, one of the best supporters, like fourth or fifth at least on the list of Mount Rushmore candidates. Like, this dude is always constantly jumping in here with the greatest support. Jumping in saying, great show tonight, Lance and Eric on Dove Valley Deep Divers. Go Broncos. Thank you, Michael. We appreciate your support as always, man. It's tremendous, dude. It's not just here on the show, it's after the fact with the tweets, posting on Facebook as well. Like dude, this dude knows how to be a supporter. Everyone should look up to a guy like that, and we thank you for your support 100%. We appreciate everybody's support here as we just hit our hour. It is 7:04 p.m. Mountain Time on a wonderful Friday evening. We're about to wind it down here quickly, guys. Eric, any last things you have burning on your mind before I close the show out?
Yeah, hopefully the Broncos win. I don't think they can afford another loss. I'll say that. There's a chance they can get in at what, 10-7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a new thing.
Yep.
There's a chance they get in, but it's a lot more difficult than if they just went out. 11-6. That's what you want. 11-6, and you're basically in. That's for this year. You don't have to worry about so much more. Win out.
Right.
Go beat the Chargers. Go give the Chargers their first home loss to Justin. Give them Justin Herbert's first home loss to the Broncos. Like, go do it. You've ended other streaks. End his 3-0 streak at home against the Broncos. And that one.
Yep. Yeah. And I think this matchup ties in so well with what the Broncos are doing offensively. And not that the Broncos are playing great offensively. I thought I came away a little bit more optimistic after the Houston game than most others did, because they found a way to put themselves, despite how poorly they played, they put themselves in a position to win. That I guess that's like my last takeaway of that whole thing. But this game against the Chargers, man, they suck against the run, specifically in the B gaps. Like, they're bad against the run in the B gaps. The Broncos run the ball well along the interior. They're terrible in the pass game, and they struggle against play action. I believe I would like to see the EPA numbers on that, but I believe they struggle against play action, because you watched it multiple times with the Ravens. You watched it multiple times, even with Jordan Love a few weeks ago. Play action passes to the boundary is something that this Chargers defense struggles with. This game lines up well for the Broncos to win. You should have won last week, and if you won last week, you really do control your destiny. You have the tiebreaker against everybody else other than the Steelers to go and make the playoffs. You win out, you control your own destiny. You need it. You need help, but you control your own destiny by winning every single game you have moving forward. Eric, what do you think?
This game lines up well for the Broncos offense. It does not line up well for the Broncos defense.
Oh, I don't disagree with that statement either.
Where they have struggled this year is stopping explosive plays from happening. They have just happened to cover it up with turnovers for the longest time, but they allow explosive plays, and that's what absolutely killed them against the Texans. And that is something the Chargers offense does well. When they can catch the ball and not fumble it, explosive plays. So they got to cut down on those explosive plays, because if this game starts getting to a point where it's going to be a shootout, and they're not able to stop those explosive plays, with the Broncos' issues on offense creating explosive plays, it could be a problem.
Yeah. Well said. And they got to get after Justin Herbert, make him uncomfortable, keep him contained within the pocket too, because he can beat you with his legs. He showed that. I believe it was the Ravens game, had a long run. I know it was the Green Bay game, had a long run. I think he had another good run against the New England Patriots as well for 16, 17 yards, something like that he extended for a first down. It's not just containing him within the pocket. You gotta contain him outside of that as well, because he will beat you with his legs. With that though, guys, we want to say thank you all for joining us on a wonderful Friday evening. Shout out to everybody who joined us in the chat, specifically Garth with the massive amounts of support. We've also got Michael Ronquillo in the house, David Youngkin coming in with great questions, Malcolm Brown. Shout out to you and your family in this trying time, man. Thank you so much for joining us as always. Colin Wood, Michael Ronquillo, Todd Ostendorf, Jose Monclava, Monica Raposo out there in Massachusetts, I believe is where she's at. I think that's right. regardless, you guys mean so much to us, and we thank you all for joining us here on a great Friday evening for Dove Valley Deep Divers. For Erick Trickel, I am Lance Sanderson. You all stay safe and take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, go Broncos.